right to a healthy environment is achieved through a promotion of a series of principles such as precautionary, the no regression, and in the case of doubt, we must protect the environment, in dubio pro natura. This principle, according with the Justice Herman Benjamin, is a transformation of then, in the case of the doubt, we should judge in favor of the accused, in dubio pro réu, rising from the precautionary principle that justify the inversion of the burden of the proof. In case of doubt, the environment should always be protected. Furthermore, the STG understand that the precautionary principle is applicable to environmental license procedure. In other decision, the court manifests the comprehension that irregular environmental license can harm the implementation of the precautionary principle, which must always be respected not only by the public authority, but also by the private sector. The court also decided that the Brazilian environmental agents can action of requesting only environmental control report instead of full an assessment of the impacts in order to grant environmental license harm the precautionary principle. The court applies the principle of prevent the plantation of and commercialization of genetic modified soya beans in a new decision. At last, it's important to highlight here some decisions that link the precautionary principle with the sugarcane field burning. The court understands that the burning of the sugarcane straw is harmful and that there is a need to find a balance between economy and environment. According with the environmental law, basic principles such as precautionary principle. And the existing mechanism and modern technology that could be replaced the burning of practice without the harming the economic activity. The court acknowledged that there may be a link between burning of the sugarcane straw and cancer. There is uncertainties led to adopt the precautionary principle at this decision. They also have used another decision, the precautionary principle, as a reason to prohibit the burning of the sugarcane field and to impose the use of substitutive technology and methods. Final talk. In conclusion, the use of generation in the efficient way are the key aspect to a more sustainable and environmental friendly future. In this sense, we can conclude that the production of the second generation of biofuels is needed in order to reduce and eliminate the negative social and environmental damage of the sugarcane production. In conclusion, in the base on the precautionary principle, which also established in our legal system, the obligation to adopt the best available technology as an instrument of risk management. We believe that the second generation of biofuels may provide a truly renewable, sustainable, and efficient energy source, contribute to the protection of the environment by avoiding the prohibition of the burning of the sugarcane fields. The Brazilian state should therefore adopt the precautionary perspective in all its action, having in mind the boundaries, requirements, and the implication of the precautionary principle established by the Superior Court of Justice case law. In this sense, Brazil must continue to act in the state of organized irresponsibility, break the vicious circles of irresponsibility that characterize our political institution. That's all. Okay. next speaker will be, now I think we have to change this table, this panel, the speakers. So I will call Spencer Thomas, it's here. Yeah. And also I'd like to call Christina Whites and Jaap Speyer. No final, vou deixar para o final. Okay. I just would like to talk that in the final of this speech we have open opportunity to raise some questions. So the next speaker has Professor Jaap Speyer.
Sure, I think
Okay, okay. So the next one.
How did you do it?
Yeah, it's okay. So the next speaker will be Spencer Thomas, Ambassador and Special Envoy for the Climate Change, Granada, and Vice Chair of the Bureau of IPBES.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon and good evening to everyone. I hail from the Caribbean, small island state called Grenada, and I thank Antonio for your invitation to be here to speak for another 10 minutes on this topic. And let me also thank the presenters earlier on, to Holo, who spoke from the small island Pacific context, and also to David, who brought in some issues on the Paris Agreement and the climate change. I would like to also take a point of departure from there. And so for Susanna, who set the stage for us on this, I thank you very much. I would like to agree a lot with what David has said, but to disagree on some of it, mainly from the perspective of where I come from. Of course, 100,000 persons in our country, as against several millions in a different perspective. But I would like to speak on the climate change and the Paris Agreement, because I've just come from the signing ceremony in New York, and that was a real, very historic occasion. So, what is the Paris Agreement to us from a small island point of view? First of all, it is a treaty under international law, which was agreed in Paris last year, 12th of December. Again, when we look at the Paris Agreement, we need to look at it not only in the context of the agreement, because it was only an annex to a COP decision, so we have to look at both. It is actually a legally binding agreement, but it's only legally binding for processes. That is very clear. It's only processes that are legally binding. The targets in the Paris Agreement are not legally binding. The mitigation targets, the means of implementation targets are not legally binding. And what we have seen is the basis of the Paris Agreement is based right now on an insufficient mitigation pledge from the INDCs that are on the table today. And the rules for the Paris Agreement are yet to be determined, and that is a very important issue. Also, in the Paris Agreement, it is a facilitatory compliance regime, not a punitive one. Basically, it means that there are no real consequences of note by not fulfilling the Paris Agreement. The document also has an article for no reservations. But importantly, and as has been said this morning, the issue of human rights is centralized in the document to a large extent, from the preamble and in some aspects of the document. Issues of sustainable development, poverty, and so on are in the document. And the document is applicable to all. Applicable to all in that the issue of differentiation and the polarization between developed and developing countries have been reduced significantly. The issue of common but differentiated responsibility is now looked at in a wider sphere. And added to this is in light of national circumstances. So yes, it's common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, but in light of national circumstances. So these are basically how we look at the Paris Agreement. The question that we will ask is, does this mean anything different? Is this a game changer? And that is the issue. And I think David mentioned some of the issues which I think were very pertinent this morning. What we have seen is, and it is very clear that the agreement is historic. It has been euphoric. We saw a very euphoric picture a while ago. It is, in fact, a great achievement. It is actually, in fact, a victory for the multilateral process. There is great momentum. It might have provided, yes, an appropriate direction of travel. As indicated, it is signaling for action and a catalyst for implementation. And we heard this morning, RIP on fossil fuel. So is it the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era? That is a question that we need to ask. When we looked at what happened a couple of days ago in New York, 175 parties signed on to the agreement. But 15 parties have gone further and ratified the agreement. Who those 15 parties are? 13 were from small island developing states, plus Palestine and Somalia. That's the 15 countries that have ratified. 38 countries, including the 15, have indicated that they will ratify the Paris Agreement before the end of 2016. And those countries, including the United States and China, and some of those big ones. What it means is the 38 countries that have indicated that they will ratify before the end of the year